there's a lot. And I think that for women, I will say in particular, who manage a lot of different roles, whether it's as mother or partner, breadwinner, whatever it may be, it's not always easy unless you're a single woman straight out of college to just drop everything, eat ramen noodles, and go live with your parents while you build out your dream. And you also don't have that kind of rich network of friends that can, connect you into, the VC world or angel world in order to accelerate the funding process. So I sometimes feel like it's really unfair to judge a co-founder or a founder negatively for managing it all because it's just the practicalities of life.
I couldn't agree more. And all of those things that you just mentioned are so true. And it's important to find a partner that appreciates the way you're getting it done, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, quite frankly, if you can get it done while holding down a full-time position, can you imagine what you can do when you're no longer there?
I couldn't agree more. And it is 100% my intention to pursue my business full time. It just requires funding, and I'm going to be the last one to take any money out of my business in order for it to grow. So whatever it takes to keep the lights on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I hope that will change in the near future, especially now that there's, I think, a greater awakening to the benefits of supporting women and female-founded companies. I'm hoping that there'll be more flexibility and open-mindedness around this topic. So now let's talk about startup hacks. So we all have to hustle. We all have to stretch a dollar. We all have to bootstrap our companies at some point. And this is obviously the focus of our show. I was just wondering if there's a few pointers that you could share that you felt helped your group save time and money and even gain a competitive edge that was, unique to your group.
Something that was unique to my group, I found, was we were brave enough to talk about what we were doing and what our intentions were early on. And even within my own personal network, I would communicate with friends and family and even strangers, this is what I'm building, this is what stage we're at, this is what we need. And what I often found was everyone is really excited to participate, even if it's just, I know a guy or I know a gal. And often in the beginning of pursuing something entrepreneurial, people are a little bit shy to talk about it, or they don't want someone to steal their idea. And how much we've talked about it has been a huge benefit to us because we've gotten discounts on things. We've connected with interesting mentors. So my hack would be just be open about what you're up to. It's your idea. Nobody's going to be able to build it the way that you have envisioned. And the more people you bring in, there's a wider variety of the art of the possible and access to more and more resources and saving a ton of money that way and saving time and mistakes. It's just communication. I know it's a little cliche, but it's huge.
No, I don't think it's cliche. And actually, you're the first person who's actually raised this very specific hack. And you are 1,000% correct. There is a paranoia, and I formerly worked in the entertainment business, and it exists there, that if you're pitching something, you don't want anybody else to have your idea because people do steal ideas. It's not like it's unfounded. But the reality is, as you stated, you gain so much more. The upside is so much greater. First of all, you're just publicly announcing your commitment to something. And that's really, I think, on a spiritual level, really powerful and starts to get the synergistic engines moving. And people want to help and they will start connecting you. And it really does accelerate your progress. So you're 100% correct.
I couldn't agree more. It's also that accountability factor. like, okay, I said I'm going to do this, so now I need to follow through with it. Here I go.
Yeah, it's exactly just like when you decide you're going to lose weight and you say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds by June, it kind of forces you, puts your feet to the fire, which is why they have all these accountability groups also now to force people to put up or shut up, so to speak.
Yeah, it works.
Um, so that's a really great one. Is there anything else top of mind that you experienced that you thought was really helpful that you'd like to share?
Yeah, actually, in this day and age, we don't have the usual mechanisms accessible that we did in the past to restore ourselves. And being an entrepreneur can be hugely depleting and exhausting. So, one way I used to restore myself was I traveled for work, I traveled for leisure, I traveled for connecting. My family's all over the place, and I can't do that anymore. So I've taken to reading, and I've never been one to read novels. I reading used to be work for me.
Mhm.
I'd only read business books or biographies, something that I thought I was getting practical uh, applied skills from having done the work of reading.
Mhm.
Reading this year has novels has completely transformed um, my experience of sitting in my house. Not only am I traveling and experiencing someone else's story, but it's made me so much stronger at communicating. Reading other people's words and how they tell a story has definitely made me better at my job. So I'm much more clear in how I communicate, and I just have so many more words at my disposal to sincerely convey my intentions than I ever did before, because I'm now reading as a way to restore myself.
Wow, that's also a first on the show, and I think you're 100% correct. And I would also add to that, especially during COVID, that watching this is my experience, watching series or films that are set in foreign countries, I particularly right now enjoy so much more than ever before because you can't go there. So watching something that's shot on the streets of France or shot in Colombia or shot in Mexico is really fun and kind of a escapism television. And I find it personally relaxing because you're stuck in a home 24/7.
Absolutely. It's like food for the soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've never
absolutely.
needed it more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are starting to wind down. We're almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you one last question. Um, If there was one piece of advice that you could give to an entrepreneur or someone who's thinking about pursuing an entrepreneurial opportunity, who's listening to us today, what would be the one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you started out that could really have helped you?
Don't take any shortcuts in the beginning. Uh, I I think my partners and I fell into an obvious trap um, when scoping out the product. Like, oh, well, practically speaking, no one ever fills out that part of the form, so we're going to just skip that part of the form in development, which ended up being so painful for us because we in, intend and are spectacular at mapping these forms entirely. And should somebody want to populate a portion of the form that isn't typically populated, we need to be able to offer that service. So we tried to cut some corners in the beginning, and it really, really make sure you another. I'm going to sneak in one more piece of advice. Um, Test your product the way an actual user will use it. So something that we ran into was that we know the product like the back of our hands. So um, we can go through the whole process so quickly, and that's not how a user would realistically interact with our software. So there were some bugs that we didn't catch that once we got in front of a client, small annoying things like we're dealing with sensitive data, so we have authentication certificates for security purposes and timeouts and things like that. Somebody who was using it was sitting on a particular page for 5 minutes, got timed out of the screen and lost all of their inputs. Whereas when we test it, we just blow through it. So make sure you test your product as if a user were realistically using it. So that's my other piece of advice.
That's actually a really good piece of advice. All right. Well, we are out of time, Tanya, and it was really great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your whole story. We really appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. If they're interested in learning more about your company, is there a website that they can go to?
Yes, blockforms.co.
Great. Okay. Well, best of luck. I want to thank you again, and to our listeners, tune in next week for more startup hacks. We have another great show you won't want to miss on the secret female founder strategies that can save you time and money when building your business. This podcast is brought to you by Women Entrepreneurs Global, the first startup studio and digital do-it-yourself startup platform for women. For more information on our guests, this podcast, and many other female founder programs, please visit womenentrepreneurs.global. I'm your host, Fernanda Carapina. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining Startup Hack. Tune in next week for more interviews. We have another great show you won't want to miss on the secret female founder strategies that can save you time and money when building your business. This podcast is brought to you by Women Entrepreneurs Global, the first startup studio and digital do-it-yourself startup platform for women. For more information on our guests, this podcast, and many other female founder programs, please visit womenentrepreneurs.global. I'm your host, Fernanda Carapina. See you next week.